Well, happy Friday, everyone. I hope everyone has some fun weekend plans. I don't have anything at the top, so let's get to what's on all of your minds.
Can we
Brett
go on?
or
I was
Jill?
going to start with Syria
Okay.
and more news about more arms shipments from Russia and sort of slight astonishment from Foreign Minister Lavrov that anybody would be upset about this. What would you have to say about that?
Well, I know there were some new reports this morning, so can you specify a little bit more on which specific reports you're referring
There were
to?
some reports of a new batch of upgraded Yakont anti-ship missile systems that are going to be shipped to Syria, which will make it obviously quite difficult for any shipping embargo to be enforced if there were to be one, for example.
Well, let me take those specific reports. Let me say so. The transfers of such weapons systems from Russia to Syria have been reported in the media several times before. I would point to the fact that the Secretary also referred to his concerns that he has expressed publicly and privately to the Russians about their continuing to aid the Syrian regime. These specific missiles, the Yakont anti-ship missile, was reported in December of 2011, and I believe in the same report there was a reference to SA-17s, which was previously reported in April 2012. We've consistently raised concerns, as I mentioned, but it seems that these cases that were reported this morning have been previously reported.
So the recent deliveries would refer to December 2000. I mean, you have no indications that there's been any recent deliveries or there are any deliveries imminent.
We're not aware of new shipments of these specific missiles.
But that's different from whether there have been recent deliveries.
Well, we're not aware of new shipments. So
No, but that's not the point. I mean, a shipment could have been made, it could have been announced 2 years ago and made 2 weeks ago. That would not be a new shipment, but it would be a recent shipment. So are you aware of any recent shipments of these, regardless of when the agreements to ship them may have been reached?
Well, I think to totally clarify what I was saying, or to be clear here, what I was saying is that the reports of these specific missiles, so the Yakont missile and the SA-17s, have been previously reported. It was previously reported that they've been transferred. In terms of whether new versions, we're not aware of new shipments of these particular missiles.
And one other thing, just if I may on this. Today's reports referred, I think, to I think they, at least the Times, I think, referred to recent shipments, and then secondly, I believe it referred to advanced guidance systems. The reference that you made to December 20th of 2011, was that a reference to these missiles with the advanced guidance systems that the Times referred to?
Well, those were the Yakont anti-ship missiles. I know there have been a number of missiles that have been reported out there. We've seen those same reports, the S-300s. I don't have anything specific for you on those reports. I was just referring to the fact that the new reports this morning have been previously reported. I was just saying that they have been previously reported, so an indication that they are new or referring to something new does not jive with our knowledge.
But Jen, that doesn't answer the question of whether the United States is concerned about any type of transfer, because let's say that there were transfers before. Now Lavrov is justifying the contracts, and he could, in the future, a day from now, they could deliver the remainder of that contract. So is the U.S. concerned about any transfers on any contract, whether it's an old one or a new one?
Absolutely, and I appreciate your question. And the Secretary himself said this just 2 weeks ago. We remain concerned about any aid that is being provided to help the Syrian regime by the Russians or anyone else, including any form of missiles. That's a concern we've expressed publicly, and the Secretary and others have expressed privately as well.
So you don't take his point that this is just a contract, we have to fulfill old contracts, and that's just the way it is.
Look, I don't want to get into that level of specificity and the contracts. I'm not familiar with the specifics of a contract, but let me just convey, to be fully clear, we are always concerned, we remain concerned about any transfer of weapons or assistance to the Syrian regime. On a larger picture, though, and the Secretary has spoken to this as well, we continue to work with the Russians in planning the international conference and in working to get both sides back to the table to work toward a political transition. At the same time, we're doing that.
I'm sorry, and maybe I'm being obtuse, but are you aware of any recent shipments of Yakont missiles by Russia to Syria?
We're not aware of new shipments.
But you keep saying new, and I worry that you are deliberately choosing a word that does not address my specific question, because new could be interpreted as something that was previously announced, and therefore it is not new. In other words, it's not an additional thing. But I'm interested not in whether it was previously announced, but rather whether it was recently delivered. So can you address the question of recent?
Well, the point I was raising, Arshad, is that previously it was reported that the transfers were made. We're not aware of any new information or new.
So you're not aware of any transfers since December 20th, 2011?
Again, I don't have any new information beyond what I just laid out
But
for you.
it's sort of odd that you're not able to address, I mean, you're saying you're not aware of any new transfers. That either means that there's nothing since 11, or it doesn't.
What I'm conveying to you here is that the transfers of these weapons have been previously announced. In terms of the timing of that, I don't have anything more specific for you. But the notion that this is new information, that it has been previously reported. Beyond that, I just don't have anything more for you.
Okay, so it's possible that there were indeed recent deliveries of these, you just don't know.
I don't want to speculate on that.
You don't know.
I don't want to speculate on
So
that.
do you know the answer to that?
I don't have any more information for you.
But do you know the answer to whether there were any recent deliveries?
I don't have anything new, additional for you, Arshad. I don't.
I can see that.
Okay, great. Any more on Syria?
What has been the response from the Russians when Secretary Kerry has publicly and privately expressed these concerns about continued aid? Has there been what you would characterize as any kind of satisfactory response? And within the weeks leading up to a peace summit, would any continued fulfillment of existing contracts still be seen as a Russian commitment to a peace summit? Would it disrupt the plans for this June summit?
Well, let me take the first one first. The Secretary, I'm not going to speak on behalf of the Russians, and obviously you can call them and reach out to them about their take on that. Clearly, and obviously the Secretary and Foreign Minister Lavrov standing next to each other just a few days ago and stating their joint commitment to moving towards the conference, moving towards a political transition, is evidence that we're both committed on both sides to doing that. Of course, there are concerns at the same time simultaneously about any aid being provided to the regime, and that remains the case, but we can still move forward on the track towards the transition, towards the conference, because we share a commitment to moving toward a political transition, and that has been the case.
But would it be fair to say then that the response has not been satisfactory from the Russians so far, specifically on these expressions of concern regarding aid, including weapons?
I don't want to parse that. We are pleased that the Russians have shown an openness to work with the Secretary, work with us, work with allies around the world to move toward planning a conference and bringing both sides back to the table. That's a very important step. At the same time, we're also working on a multilateral approach to continue to help the opposition and continue to aid them with what they need. That is going on, of course, on the other side as well.
So there was no request for an embargo on arms deliveries leading up to the peace conference?
I'm not going to get into any specifics of internal conversations. Is it on Syria?
Yes, please.
Okay.
My name is Joseph Khawli from Sky
Hi,
News
Joseph.
Arabia. Regarding the International Peace Conference on Syria, the idea suggested by Russia and the United States, would you agree if Iran participated?
Well, we've talked about this. Welcome to the briefing room this week. Good to see you. We've talked about this quite a bit this week. I don't have anything new for you on the conference today. The planning is underway. I mentioned yesterday that the P3 political representatives were here yesterday, so that would be the U.S., UK, and France. They had a meeting. There's going to be a meeting next week that the Secretary will be participating in Jordan. But in terms of the participants and the agenda for the conference, that's being worked out with our partners and with the UN, and we'll continue to work on that every day.
And what about the meeting of Friends of Syria that's going to happen in Jordan? Secretary Kerry is going to participate.
Yes, he will be participating.
But the opposition, the Syrian opposition, said it's not going to participate. So how this would help the Syrian opposition, and would you be there if still this would be the opinion for
Well,
this
the
opposition?
purpose of the meeting in Jordan next week is to work with our partners, work with the London 11 that we've worked with in the past to help the opposition in planning for the conference. The Syrian opposition, as you may know, also has their own conference next week that will take place in Istanbul that has a broad agenda, including their plans to expand their membership and leadership, and they'll be deciding there whether they'll be participating moving forward. We certainly hope they will. We've been in close contact with them. Ambassador Ford and others have been, but I would send you to them for any further comment.
Did you have
go
a
ahead,
date and venue for the peace conference yet?
The Geneva, the next Geneva 1, follow-up to Geneva
Yes.
1, I should call it. We need a good name for it. I don't have a date yet. We're still in discussions with the UN and other partners about the timing of that, and we continue to shoot for early June.
Geneva, right? It will take place.
We
in
don't
Geneva.
have any specifics on the location. Any announcement would come from the
Really,
UN.
the president said Geneva yesterday. Did he screw up magnificently?
Well, it's a follow-up to Geneva 1.
He said talks in Geneva. You can
Okay. Well, when we have a formal announcement to make, it will come from the UN, so I'll
so
let
you're
you all
saying he
wait
was
for that.
incorrect, or what?
I'm not saying that, Brad. I'm
I
just
just don't
telling.
understand why you hide information.
I'm
when-
just-
when the president of the United States has given the name of the city.
I'm just suggesting you wait for a formal announcement for all the
Okay.
details.
So the president, when he says something, it's not formal enough for you.
Brad, thank you.
The secretary said last Friday that it's going to be in Geneva when he did the Google chat. I have a question. Do you have a reaction to the Syrian activist Mazen Darwish? It's reported that he's being scheduled to appear before the Syrian anti-terrorist court on May 19.
We do, and thank you for your question. We're deeply concerned about the well-being of Syrian activist Mazen Darwish, director for the Syrian Center for Media and Freedom of Expression, and several of his colleagues who were detained by Syrian Air Force intelligence over a year ago for the center's work to promote and protect human rights in Syria. Just to give folks a little bit of background in case you haven't heard of this particular case, Mazen and two of his colleagues are scheduled to appear before the Anti-Terrorism Court in Damascus on Sunday, May 19th. We feel this is clearly part of the regime's continued attempts to repress freedom of expression and silence those who peacefully advocate for democracy and human rights. And finally, I would also note that the Syrian Center for Media and Freedom of Expression, of which he is the director, is the only Syrian NGO to be granted consultative status by the United Nations Economic and Social Council.
Thank you.
One more thing on Syria.
Sure.
But the secretary himself in Rome referred to it as Geneva 2. So the exchange you had with Brad, I think, makes all of us think it's not going to be in Geneva. Would you steer us away from that?
I will stop being too cute about this. There will be a formal announcement. The obvious location for it is Geneva. It has been said by many people that it will be in Geneva. Because it is not our announcement to make, it is the UN's announcement. I just wanted to refer to the official
Okay.
announcement.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have any timing for you on that. Obviously, there are a number of pieces, including the date and particulars like that, that would need to be decided before any announcement would be made.
Jen, I wanted to ask a follow-up on yesterday's designation of Syrian air by the Treasury. It was made because you believe that it has been used to ferry weapons into Syria, and I understand that grounds. But on the other hand, it's also quite a vital service within Syria itself for helping people within Syria to move around now that the roads have become very dangerous. I wondered if perhaps in this case such a designation could be seen as a little harsh when it might actually have a reverse effect and hit the people that you're actually trying to help.
Sure, and I appreciate your question. Because it's a Treasury designation, I would point you to them for the specifics of the reasoning and the pieces weighed there.
But there's nothing you can add from the state side of it?
I just am not going to weigh in on a Treasury designation.
Can you weigh in on the state designation
Sure.
of the leader of al-Nusra Front? Because al-Nusra was already designated by state some time ago, but specifically the leader being designated as a global terrorist. There was a note about having recently pledged loyalty to the leader of al-Qaeda. Was that the prompt for the designation, or was there something else?
Well, just so everybody's aware, and we sent out an extensive media note on this yesterday, so if anybody didn't receive it, we're happy to provide it. But the Department of State has designated al-Nusra Front leader Muhammad al-Jawani as a specially designated global terrorist. The consequences of this designation includes a general prohibition against engaging in transactions involving Jawani and the freezing of all property and interests in his property, and that is in the United States or comes within the United States. As you mentioned, Margaret, but let me just repeat, he's considered the leader of al-Nusra Front and has stated in videos that his ultimate goal is the overthrow of the Syrian regime and the institution of Sharia law throughout the country. These public declarations validate what we've long known, that al-Nusra Front is the Syrian arm of the AQI franchise, and this designation is something that confirms that further. I'm not going to get into the specifics of how those are decided, but clearly he's somebody who there is great concern about, which warranted this specific step.
And has there been a change in the nature of the violence or anything that is related to this?
I don't have anything specific for you on the reasons why now. I'm happy to connect you with someone who can speak to that more in depth. Obviously, as somebody who is the leader of al-Nusra Front, as somebody who has, we've long expressed concerns about the actions of that group. This was a step that seemed like a natural next step.
Can I ask about that? Does the U.S. government have any reason to believe that this individual has any assets in the United States or under U.S. jurisdiction that could be frozen?
That's a good question, Arshad. I'm going to have to take the question and look further into it. I don't know off the top of my head what his assets are in the United States.
May 2nd was the second anniversary of the death of Osama bin Laden, and my question is now here. A number of offices have been opened by the Taliban, like in Qatar and other places. Where do we stand now as far as terrorism is concerned around the globe after this Osama bin Laden's death? Are they still existing?
That's quite a broad question. I will tell you that we remain committed to fighting it. The Secretary is doing everything he can on that part. The President speaks about this frequently, and I'd point you to his strong remarks in the past month.
When does the global terrorism report come out? Might be something to point to as well in the future.
Thank you, Brad. I'm happy to do that. Go ahead in the back.
About terrorism, but it's another spot. I mean, in Egypt, I asked this question yesterday about.
Okay.
A few days ago, it was reported that a terror plot or plan was there to target different embassies, and they specifically mentioned the American embassy and then French embassy. I don't know if you have something to say about it.
Well, we work closely with our partners around the world on security issues and, of course, keeping our people safe. We don't speak on specifics of those for obvious reasons. And so I would refer you to the government of Egypt for any other specifics.
So my other question is related to something happened last weekend. An American citizen was stabbed next to the American embassy, as a matter of fact. Do you have anything going on and any involvement from FBI or anybody is involved to the investigation, what's going on in that part of the world?
I don't have anything more specific for you on that. I think we may have spoken to it at the time, which our plan was to get you yesterday, and if we haven't, I'm happy to do that following the briefing. Go ahead, Jill.
I know you don't like to obviously comment about CIA affairs. However, we know that for the past week there's been a big spy scandal brewing in Moscow. And just wanted to know, it's been very, very public, and obviously deliberately so, on the part of the Russians to splash it all over the Russian media. Is the State Department commenting to the Russians? Is the ambassador talking about this? Is there a concern that this is turning into some type of almost public vendetta?
Well, Jill, no surprise, and you prefaced it at the beginning. I don't have anything further to add to what Patrick has said from the podium here about this specific case. I will say broadly that, over the years, we have worked closely with Russia on a number of issues, including, combating terrorism, including on economic issues. You're very familiar with what we did to implement the New START treaty to work on North Korea, Iran, Afghanistan. You've seen the Secretary meet with Foreign Minister Lavrov. I think actually it's more than any other foreign minister at this point. They've worked together. So we still feel that we have a very positive relationship and one that we can continue to work together on areas where we agree. There are still areas, of course, where we disagree, but I'm not going to weigh in further on the impact here. I would just tell you that we continue to work with Russia on a number of broad global cooperative issues across the board.
Same subject. Has the alleged spy left Russia yet?
I don't have anything for you on that.
I think you said earlier in the week that you abide by your Vienna Convention obligations. 72 hours would be up now. So have you abided by those obligations and pulled him out of the country, or is he still there?
I just don't have an update for you on that.
And then there was a report today that the FSB spokesman outed the CIA station chief in Moscow.
I have not seen that report, but I don't expect I would have anything for you. I would point you to our friends at the CIA. Go ahead.
So this week, a senior advisor to Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe made a sudden and rare visit to North Korea, and this trip has just ended on Friday. So the U.S. Special Representative for North Korea Policy, Glenn Davis, didn't receive advance notice of this trip, and also said we need to make efforts in future to ensure good communications. Doesn't mean there's no good enough communications between Japan and U.S. Any comments on that?
Well, let me say broadly that we have a very close and cooperative relationship with the government of Japan. We work with them closely on a number of issues. The Secretary was just there just a couple of weeks ago. On this particular issue, I don't think I can add much more to what Ambassador Davies said about not having prior knowledge. He is in Japan right now. I expect he will speak to his meetings and his visit as he's departing tomorrow, and so I would point you to that.
So he's going to mention more things in this meeting.
Well, he will give a summary of his visit to Japan, and he had expected that he would receive a little bit more information on this. I don't know if he has or hasn't, but I would point you to whatever he says on that when he's leaving.
Because some U.S. media say the Japan's secret trip to North Korea disrupt United stance against North Korea. So how do you? Any comments?
Well, again, it's hard for me to speak to a trip that I don't know the purpose of or the details of. So I'd point you to the government of Japan for an answer to that question. Our approach to North Korea has been the same. We remain committed to working with our partners to put necessary pressure on. That's why the Secretary was there just a couple of weeks ago, and why one of the reasons the ambassador is in the region now.
Trips that I think you may know something about the details
Yes.
and purpose of. Certain parts of the Secretary's trip have already been announced. He in Rome told us that he would be in Jerusalem and Ramallah, I think he said the 20th and the 21st, and you've confirmed that he will attend the meeting in Jordan, although you didn't know when. Are you now in a position to do a trip announcement? It becomes very hard to write about the trip if one doesn't know sort of where all he's going.
Understandably so. Those are two major components of the trip. As you know, he'll also be going to Ethiopia to participate in the AU celebration there a week from Saturday. We will have a trip announcement with all the final details out later this afternoon, so I would point you to that, and of course happy to address questions once that's out.
The Prime Minister this morning, we saw the interview with the Foreign Affairs magazine. He compared Yashakuni Shrine to U.S. Arlington, cemetery. He said that U.S. should understand the purpose for his visit to Yashakuni Shrine because U.S. president did the same thing. I wonder, do you have any comment? Do you agree this kind of comparison?
You know, I haven't seen those comments. It may be because we were kind of getting ready to come down here. I'm happy to take a look at them. I know we've spoken to his visit several weeks ago from the podium in the past, but I'll have to get back to you on that.
Japan's mayor's sex-slave remarks, and you said they were outrageous and offensive yesterday. How do you see the recent Japanese right-to-win activities? Because some South Korea media say that Japan's far-right politicians have lost their minds. Any comments?
I spoke to this pretty extensively yesterday, so I would point you to my remarks yesterday when I called the comments offensive and outrageous. And we still feel the same way. But beyond that, I don't know that I have much more analysis for you. I'd refer you to the government of Japan. Yes?
Today, actually right now, thousands of Egyptians are protesting against President Mohamed Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood in Tahrir Square. I would like to know if you have any comment about that.
I haven't seen those reports, so I'd have to look closer at the details. You know, of course, we always support the freedom of and the rights of people to peacefully protest. We encourage them to do that peacefully. So let me take a closer look at that.
No, I know my colleague and I have been asking this for a week. State Department seems reluctant to make any comment before the investigation coming out. But both sides, from Taiwan and Philippines, just released their investigation unilaterally. So far, what the U.S. has learned, it seems like this is two different versions of the story.
Well, I haven't had an opportunity to review the reports that have come out. This continues to be an issue, and we have actually spoken to it pretty extensively from the podium and called it a tragic death. We've encouraged, of course, the Philippine government to continue with their investigation and to pursue all avenues for that. This is an issue that we encourage both sides to work through together. That remains our position, and we're happy to take a closer look at the reports that have come out.
And yesterday you mentioned you didn't know that the Philippines refused to cooperate with Taiwan to have a joint investigation. Do you have any follow-up?
I think I said I would take a closer look at it. You know, this is an issue where, again, it's up to the government of the Philippines, to the Taiwan authorities to work through together. Obviously, we regret the tragic death of this fishing boat master. We've said that a couple times from here. That, of course, remains the case. I'd also point you to the fact that Joe Yoon, our acting assistant secretary, expressed his condolences to the family for this unfortunate loss of life when he was on Capitol Hill. So we've repeatedly expressed that. Unfortunately, I don't think I have anything new for you on this today.
He said that he didn't know what really happened, but so far there's so many information already provided. So U.S. doesn't still,
Well, we didn't want to weigh in on an investigation that the Philippine government was going to take underway. I haven't seen their report on the investigation, but again, we'll take a closer look at that. Go ahead in the back.
If the two sides, they don't want to work together, will the U.S. get involved? And if the U.S. doesn't want to get involved, what would your reaction be if China proposed to be the mediator?
Well, there's a lot of hypotheticals there, which I'm not going to weigh into, but we continue to encourage both sides to work together. We've been in touch with both the government of the Philippines as well as the Taiwan authorities. We hope they will work together. We continue to encourage that, and beyond that, I'm not going to get ahead of where things are. Joe, go ahead.
Jen, can I change subject? It would seem that in Iran, the Guardians Council, which is vetting the candidates for the upcoming elections next month, have decided and have ruled that women cannot contest and cannot stand as candidates. I wondered what the United States' reaction is to that, considering that 50% of the population in Iran is women.
Well, we don't take positions on any candidates, as you know, and we hope that the upcoming presidential elections will be free, fair, and transparent, and will represent the will of the Iranian people. So we wouldn't weigh into decisions made by the government. Of course, broadly, we hope that women around the world participate in politics and elected office, but beyond that, I don't think I have anything specific for you.
Taking the word fair, if you're being fair, it would seem to exclude 50% of the population from an election would already mean that it is not a fair election.
Well, we don't weigh in onto the candidates and the candidates that are chosen through the process in Iran. Of course, broadly speaking, we do want women to participate in elections around the world and, rise up in elected office.
Iran.
I'm not suggesting that, Arshad. I'm just suggesting that, we leave it to the process that happens in Iran for them to pick their candidates.
I mean, why, it seems astounding that this department, what if they decided to exclude, as this country once did, not merely women, but black people? Would that be acceptable to you? That's just their choice. They do it any way they want, and you're not going to stand up for democratic rights?
I think we pretty broadly stand up for democratic rights from
Not for
this
Iranian
building.
women, apparently.
That's not at all what I was conveying. I think there are two separate issues here. Of course, we want women to participate in processes around the world, whether that is participating in voting or being elected to office, of course. More specifically, in terms of how candidates are selected, we don't weigh in on specific candidates, of course, as the government of Iran is picking them. But broadly, yes, we would like women to be participating at every level.
Including in Iran.
Including around the world.
But this isn't a process. This is a clear case of gender discrimination, no? Isn't that a difference between a vetting procedure and just saying all women, no?
Again,
you got to take a stand on something like that.
Again, Brad, I think I made pretty clear, and I don't know that I have much more to add, that, of course, we have long supported women being elected to office in the United States and around the world and participating in the process. We want this to be free and fair. There's a lot of ways to, of course, define that. But again, we don't select or play a role in selecting who the candidates are. We can take a look through the process and happy to comment once it's completed. Go ahead, Goyal.
India. Can you confirm that Home Minister of India, Mr. Sushil Kumar Sindhu, should be here on Monday for the next 2 days to have talks on terrorism and cooperation between India and U.S. And also, he may be asking the U.S. again access to Mr. Rana, who was involved in the Mumbai attacks.
I haven't seen reports of him visiting. And he was an official from India?
May 20th through 22nd, Indian televisions, Indian reports are there.
Okay. I have not seen that. I don't know that he has meetings here. We're happy to check on that for you and for others if you all are interested. Go ahead.
Just back to Japan and DPRK. Just let me reconfirm one thing. I let the Ambassador Davis remark in Japan. The United States has not been informed about Japanese Prime Minister senior advisor's trip to North Korea.
Well, Ambassador Davies spoke to this just a couple of days ago. Obviously, we're well aware now. I would point you to his comments. I don't have anything further to add to that. As I mentioned a little bit yesterday, since Ambassador Davies is there in Japan and having several meetings, it's possible that he will get more of a briefing on this visit. I don't want to predict what he will know by tomorrow, but I would expect that he'll make some comments as he's leaving the country.
Does the United States know this thing before or after that?
Again, I think Ambassador Davies' comments made clear on that point. Go ahead.
That means not only that Ambassador Davies, but everybody in this building, including Secretary Kelly and the White House, nobody knows about this trip beforehand, right?
I don't think I have any further details on the trip other than what I've already said in terms of what we knew and didn't know. Wallace, do you have something?
Afghanistan. President Karzai's office issued a brief statement today that he spoke to Secretary Kerry. Do you have any details in the readout? What
I do. So Secretary Kerry spoke this morning with President Karzai. They discussed our joint progress on the bilateral security agreement, border issues, and the status of the ongoing peace process. Secretary Kerry also affirmed that he and President Karzai remain committed to the same strategy and the same goal of a stable, sovereign Afghanistan, responsible for its own security, and able to ensure that it can never again be a safe haven for terrorists.
Do you know when this BSA would be signed? What's the status on that?
I don't have any specific update on that. Again, it's obviously something that we continue to work very closely on at many levels with the government of Afghanistan.
Syria?
A little bit on Pakistan. There was a bomb blast and outside 2 mosques inside Pakistan. 15 people were killed and more than 100 injured. Do you have anything to say?
I do, and thank you. I appreciate your question. We offer the families of all those killed in today's attacks our deepest condolences and wish those injured a speedy recovery. We remain concerned about extremist violence of all kinds. Violence against innocent civilians is an assault on the values of the people of Pakistan and a threat to a prosperous future of all citizens. Go ahead, Burma.
Yeah. So as I'm sure you've seen, there are reports that the Myanmar authorities have released 23 political prisoners. This is on the eve of the departure of the president for his visit to Washington. 3 questions. 1, what's your reaction to the release? 2, would you not prefer that all of the political prisoners, which activist groups say number in the hundreds, be released immediately? And 3, activist groups say that, and I think they're right, that there is a pattern of the Myanmar authorities releasing prisoners at sort of strategic times before sanctions decisions come up, before important visits. Wouldn't you rather not have this piecemeal process and just see them all freed?
Well, thank you, Arshad. We do welcome the reports that approximately 20 political prisoners were released today. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, so that leads the number to, I believe, over 850 now. So we continue to urge the government to work through the Political Prisoner Review Committee, which is specifically put in place to address remaining cases. And of course, we encourage them to release all political prisoners unconditionally. And, I spoke to this a little yesterday, but let me just add, there's of course been great progress made and a number of positive reforms in Burma, including the release of these prisoners, including the easing of restrictions. But part of the discussion next week, I'm sure, will be about continued progress that needs to be made.
And the 850 number refers to the number that have been released so far?
Yes.
And do you have an estimate of the number that remain in
I
prison?
I don't have one here. I'm happy to look further into that for you.
And what about the argument that rights activists make that this is a very kind of cynical process and that people get let out before there are sort of diplomatic visits, things that are, it's good for the optics. Do you see it that way?
I don't want to speak to that specifically, but I can say that of course we want all prisoners to be released unconditionally, and that would be a wonderful step. We can't underestimate the fact that Burma has made great progress in the last couple of years. Yes, there's still more work to do, but the progress they've made has been some significant, and they've put in place an ambitious reform agenda, and we encourage them to keep doing more.
Oh, I got one more. I'm sorry. Yesterday, I think I had asked if you, I think you said that you would be happy to check whether the secretary or anybody from the building had spoken to the Israeli government about the 4 outposts that are apparently going to be legalized. Have they?
We have addressed it through many channels here, and it's raised regularly. I don't have anything specific on the secretary specifically.
But on this specific issue?
Yes, on this specific case of the recent reports we discussed yesterday,
Okay.
and I did check on that for you.
And was it done at the embassy or at level, or was it, the acting assistant secretary?
I don't want to get into that level of detail.
Why not?
It was just raised at a high level here.
At a high level?
At a high level, yes.
Okay, and high level means like an ambassador or up, or?
I'm just not going to be specific, but this is something the secretary has raised repeatedly in public and private.
Okay.
But I did follow up on your specific
thank
question.
you. There's a reason why it's interesting, though. I mean, my specific question was actually about Secretary Kerry, so he did not raise it then.
I'll have to just double check on that for you.
Okay, please do. The reason we ask, I mean, it's not to be pesky.
Oh,
but
no,
it's-
not at all.
But it's because the level at which something gets raised conveys something. So when the president raises an issue, it means one thing. When the secretary raises it, it means something. When the assistant secretary, the acting assistant secretary raises it, it means something. When a third secretary makes a phone call about
Sure,
it means
I
something
certainly
else.
understand.
So if
and-
you could tell us
and
where...
And it is, and our position on these issues has been no secret either, so.
Yeah.
Great. One thing I would just like to add, many of you know Jonathan Lally. He's standing over there with blonde hair and hiding behind the post. But today is his last day. He's going over to the White House. They've stolen him. But he has been just an incredible asset. I've only been here 2.5 months, but he has helped me navigate through this entire building, every aspect of getting ready to talk to all of you, and I'm just so grateful for him. And I've only been here 2.5 months, so there are many people who appreciate him anymore. The White House will be well served by him, and I just wanted to thank him, and we'll embarrass him and just give him a little. Okay, thank you, everyone.
We appreciate him too, and congratulations, Jonathan.